Ой-ой-ой. Делать. Wait. Oh, yeah. Okay. A lot should be done regarding Russian propaganda in the third world, because the countries of the so-called third world, they look what's going on in Ukraine in the context of the Cold War. So they believe that this is a product of the Cold War. The Cold War is still going on. Russia is threatened by the NATO expansion. So this is kind of, ideological framework for them, for the countries, for many countries of the third world. A lot of them relies also on economic relations with Russia, but also on military relations with Russia, and they are trying to use the concept of the multipolar world. This is especially regarding the countries of the so-called BRICS group, which in particular include Brazil, South Africa, and India. So let me give you an example of Russian propaganda in India and Indian response to that. I remember that on the first day of the invasion, I was on the Indian TV, and there were headlines on the Indian TV like, Kyiv is encircled, invasion almost complete, Kabul fell, Kyiv is next. And I was trying to explain to them that this is not the case. Kyiv wasn't encircled, and they didn't believe me, despite the fact that they had good correspondence on the ground in Kyiv. However, I think that with the time, given Ukrainian resistance, the approach of the Indian TV, for example, is changing, and now they're putting the question, will Russian military victory come? And they put the headline unlikely. So there is a change, and this change is connected with a successful Ukrainian resistance. Still, if we are talking about position of countries like India in international organizations, it's quite, it takes into account pro-Russian narratives. For example, during the vote on the United Nations General Assembly resolution on March the 2nd, with demand to stop Russia's aggression, India and South Africa abstained from it. Interestingly, that Brazil and Indonesia, they were supporting this resolution, so they demanded the stop to the Russian aggression. When the question of expulsion of Russia from the UN Human Rights Council was held, this question of human rights is tricky for many countries. And those states that were against the resolution a lot of them are authoritarian ones. However, India, Indonesia, Brazil, and South Africa, they didn't want to complicate relations with Russia, and they abstained. But in this case, this abstention actually played into the hands of Ukraine and against Russia, because the procedure of calculation of votes in the Council for Human Rights is that on abstentions are not counted, and decision is made based on 2/3 of those who voted in favor or against it. So basically, practically, the fact that these countries didn't vote against the resolution played into the hands of Ukraine and the whole international community. So the point is that it's necessary to work with these countries and explain to them what's going on. And the more atrocities Russia is doing in Ukraine, the more these countries would be inclined at least not to take Russian narrative, and in some cases even support Ukraine. I will give you an incredible fact about Serbia. We know that in Serbia, pro-Russian views are very, very powerful, but Serbia voted first for the resolution on March 2nd of the United Nations General Assembly to stop the Russian aggression. And secondly, Serbia voted for expulsion of Russia from United Nations Council for Human Rights. So it means that we need to work hard to counteract Russian propaganda, and we will be able to do that.